everyone. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. See people trickling in. Seems to be tapering off now, so makes sense to get going. I want to thank you all for coming. Before we jump into everything, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping just to get started. What you're seeing and hearing here is being recorded, so we'll get a chance to share a link with you after the presentation is complete, and it's something you can share out and give to other folks and watch again later if you have other questions. Also, do encourage questions along the way. With the format of the GoToWebinar here, the way that works is we'll have you type questions into the little question box that you see there, and what we'll do is toward the end of things, we'll go through sort of a Q&A session and give you guys a chance to get responses from those questions. So do encourage those all the way through, please. That being said, I think we'll go ahead and jump in here. Again, thank you all for coming. Start off by introducing the folks who you have on the call here. First, myself, Todd Geib. I am with CoreTech Services. I'm the data center practice manager. And then Rohit Goyal from Nutanix, a product marketing manager. What we're going to do here, just to give you a feeling for agenda, is some sort of brief, who you're talking to or who you're hearing from at the beginning, and then actually Rohit and I have I think what we're going to do is have a bit of a discussion back and forth, just kind of asking questions and taking more of a discussion style approach through this to give you a feeling for things. So first, obviously came here to hear about Nutanix. We thought it made sense, though, with CoreTech being involved, to give you a quick little overview about CoreTech before we jump into the Nutanix content. Who we are, why we're here on a call with Nutanix, why we partner with Nutanix, and why we think it makes sense for companies like you to use us in your projects, be they Nutanix or otherwise. So first, a little bit about CoreTech. We were founded in 2005, a little over 10 years ago. We're based out of Farmington Hills, Michigan, but we operate nationwide. We consist of a little over 100. I think we're between 110, 120 people right now. Something a bit unique about us is 85% of that team is delivery focused. So those are the people who have boots on the ground, who are actually out in the field doing delivery. The rest, we try to keep low overhead, in our day-to-day business. One of the things you'll hear, it's sort of a broken record kind of thing, but on purpose. It's something we live and die by. It's our mission statement: project success, no exceptions. I've been at CoreTech almost 4 years now, in a number of different roles, including delivery and others. And I can honestly say I've seen the company live and die by that motto on a number of different levels. Some quick sort of tooting our own horn here with some awards. For the last 5 years in a row, we've won the National Best and Brightest Companies to Work For, and that's, like I said, nationally throughout the U.S. In the last 8 years in a row here in Metro Detroit. Not too many other companies can say that they've done both of those things. We've also won the Citrix and Absence Central Partners of the Year, likewise the Nutanix Healthcare Partner of the Year. Some key distinguishers for CoreTech: we are a Microsoft Global Managed Services Partner. Along those lines, one of the things, not the only thing, but one of the things we do related to Microsoft is Azure-related items. And I think I just heard the other day we are amongst the cloud providers for Azure. I think we're in the top 3 in the nation for that right now. We also have partnerships at the highest level with Imprivata, Citrix, VMware, AppSense, iGel, and of course Nutanix, and amongst others. So how is CoreTech spread out to handle the problems that you might throw at us? Right now we are split up into what we call practices. We have a number of different areas that we've broken down to kind of segregate talent in the sense that this is how, or there's different types of areas that we can attack. So as you can see here, a virtualization practice where we focus on both server and desktop virtualization. So, a little bit of Citrix, VMware View, that sort of stuff. The data center practice, as you can see here, that's near and dear to my heart. Obviously, it's a practice I run, where we cover basically everything storage, networking, and compute. So as you can imagine, that's where Nutanix is central. We also have a managed services practice. This covers sort of everything after we're done delivering on our initial projects. What we'll do is come back and support projects that we've already delivered on and provide ongoing services for those. We do have a cloud solutions practice as well. I mentioned Azure earlier. This is frankly a new direction for us. This is becoming more and more of our business and is a key part of what we do every day. And like I mentioned before as well, Microsoft, that's where you cover your Office 365s, AD, System Center, OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. All of those items we have ninjas for in our Microsoft practice. So some key CoreTech differentiators. Like I said before, broken record, I apologize. Project success, no exceptions. This is truly what is the center of everything that we do. We're consultants first. So what that means is we come in with a consulting mentality. We are, like I said, services oriented. We are there to solve a problem, not necessarily sell a product only. We're there for the overall solution. And my slide went too fast. We are about solutions, not technology. So one of the things that we definitely do not do is walk in and say, these are the sets of technologies that we have that you have to pick from. That is the only way to go. As a result, we're technology agnostic. So when we are going after solving problems and throwing solutions at it, we're going at what's going to solve the problem best, not necessarily the laundry list of technologies that we support. We wouldn't be who we are in the business that we are in without our partnerships. So obviously Nutanix is at the center of one of those. They're a great example of how we do partnerships. So one of the things I find unique about CoreTech as compared to other similar organizations is we will, it isn't just a sign on the dotted line to do a partnership with a company. Before we even get to that point, we'll have the company bring in, be it a copy of the software, a version of the hardware, and we did this actually with Nutanix, and we throw it in front of our delivery team. We let those guys hammer it on it for a while, and frankly, if they're not happy, it's a non-starter. We need to have something that, from a technological standpoint, can hold its weight. And frankly, with Nutanix, we started off with them, I think it was over 4 years ago, and we said, no, it's not quite ready for prime time yet, and we had a non-starter to start off with. We purposely went back to them because we saw the technology had improved, and the rest is history. We're a top-level Nutanix partner now. Another interesting differentiator with CoreTech is, while we don't always do pilots, we're doing pilots a fair amount of the time. 100% of the time that we've done pilots, they have gone into production without issue. Not something a lot of companies out there can say. And finally, just a key thing we like to throw in here is about some intellectual property that we have. While we are services oriented, we do have a development arm as well. So what we realized over time is there were some holes in the market that existing folks out there were not filling, and so we decided to build it ourselves. So we have some IP out there that helps with virtual desktops and a lot of the items surrounding that. So that being said, that's a little bit about CoreTech. I think I'm initially going to hand it over here to you, Rohit, to do a little bit about Nutanix, and then we'll go ahead and jump into our discussion.
Great. Thanks. Thanks for having me on this, Todd, and I appreciate CoreTech setting this up. I think you know, the partnership is definitely a good thing that we're moving forward on in terms of like diving deeper. Now we're, you know, instead of just telling the Nutanix story, we're getting into, you know, specifics. And today, when we talk about security, I think you know, the listeners will definitely hear something that's a little bit more different that Nutanix has to offer. So one quick thing, if you're not familiar with Nutanix, let me just quickly give you a high-level overview of that. So what we see is there's a problem with traditional infrastructure, and what it's not designed for is cloud environments. So the enterprise needs to take that and re-platform it, and that's where you get this enterprise cloud infrastructure. And how Nutanix solves this is by pioneering hyperconverged, right? So what we do is we natively take compute and storage and into an x86 server, and we attach flash and hard disk drives, and we deploy that in a cluster. So customers can take this and start small and scale it out. You only need 3 nodes to get it going in 2U rack space. And then you can add compute and storage capacity when you need. So Hyperconverged, what it's really doing is it's really radically simplifying how infrastructure is deployed and managed, and reduces that IT footprint by up to 90%. So Nutanix doesn't stop there. It takes that solution and natively integrates enterprise class virtualization into the product. The hypervisor comes pre-built in with all Nutanix appliances. But you have choice there, right? We're not saying you have to use just the Nutanix hypervisor. And then the VM management and everything else is built in as well. So no additional components are necessary to get it up and going. It really becomes a powerful virtualization solution. It allows you to have that VM high availability, the live migrations, the one-click hypervisor upgrades that you've come to understand as Nutanix's product offering. So at this point, I'm going to hand it back over to Todd.
Thanks, Rohit. So before we jump in, I just want to take a quick look here. We do have a couple questions. Appreciate that, guys. Definitely keep them coming. So to your first point there, Rohit, one of the things that we're seeing emerge as a differentiator from a Nutanix standpoint is this interesting concept that I think most storage and compute vendors overlook, and that's looking at this from the standpoint of security. So, you know, it's one thing to be able to talk blocks and you know, how data moves between nodes and how, you know, how your workloads are serviced from a performance standpoint. But one of the things I think is altogether too often overlooked is how do these systems react from a security standpoint? You know, how are they hardened? How are you know, the day-to-day operations of the development and that sort of thing, you know, addressed with hardware? So, or I'm sorry, addressed in terms of security. So, what I thought we'd do here is, Rohit, between you and I, this will, I think, sound like a bit of a conversation, hopefully, to those out there. But the idea that I think this will shake free is for you folks out there to be thinking about this. This is something that you should be asking your compute and storage vendors and be thinking about along the way. It's altogether too often, having been in the storage industry, that people are thinking of security as an afterthought or not at all. And so anyway, with that being said, Rohit, a question for you, actually a couple here. To your point, what we're starting to see are shifts here, shifts in data centers, and they're moving away from the traditional legacy three-tier architecture, and likewise private and public clouds out there. And I'm curious, just at a high level, with respect to these items, how do you see Nutanix being positioned as it relates to security?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Todd. So, and we do get a lot of that with our federal customers and the healthcare customers and the financial customers, and they all want to understand that they're putting in infrastructure that's been hardened. So one thing to keep in mind, that you have these cloud services, both public and private, and they offer enterprises a new way to consume IT resources. But the businesses, they need to be able to buy and use those resources when they need, right? So they don't want to go ahead and buy something, that's meant for 5-6 years down the road as the technology changes. They want to buy as they need it and as businesses change. So what we've noticed is that businesses are looking for those public cloud-like capabilities, really that fractional consumption model, so the pay-as-you-grow economics, that infrastructure and platform resources on demand, really that lower operational overhead, and continuous innovation on that platform, right? So it's not something static. It needs to innovate and has to do it through software upgrades without having to completely forklift your environment. But what we've also noticed is that they still want that balance between owning and renting, making sure that they're lowering their total overall cost, especially as the workloads change. And that's really where some of the security stuff comes into play. You've got strict data governance, and you have these quick access to their data when they need it. Sometimes when you put data out in the in these public clouds, you don't know exactly where it is. And if you think about your EMEA customers or things like that are a little bit further out, they're thinking about I want to make sure that my data is in the data center where I know and I have compliance regulations around it. So you really have to meet those tailored SLAs on top of that, right? And at the end of the day, Todd, it's really about having flexibility and choice of platforms. So it's about being able to pick that public or private infrastructure that best meets their needs. And I'm not saying that everything has to go and behind the firewall. I understand that some workloads work well outside in the public cloud, but that's really that balance between owning and renting that I alluded to.
Sure. So it seems to me with the flexibility that Nutanix offers, and I know we see it with a lot of our customers as compared to traditional three-tier architecture. There's an element of flexibility that you see at the storage and compute level, but I could see that same flexibility taking effect with respect to security. So talk a little bit about how, from a traditional architecture standpoint, Nutanix compares and where there are disadvantages, let's say, to the traditional architecture and from a security standpoint.
Yeah, totally. I think I couldn't agree more. So let's dive into that a little bit. So in the legacy three-tier infrastructure stack, if you think about it, you have products from all these different vendors, right? And then you get a fragmented view of security. It's not easy, right? So for example, you've got the storage vendor who thinks about the storage for security, while the virtualization vendor only looks at the virtualization part of it. A lot of the security issues that we see today are because of misconfigurations, right, between products and vendors. It's not about somebody maliciously, going out there and configuring something inappropriately, right? It's more about folks who are trying to do the right thing, but it's about combining those vendors together. So in terms of validating and maintaining that security baseline, it really becomes difficult, right? So for example, through software upgrades, it's a time-consuming process. And beyond that, it becomes error-prone, and it's manual. And all this really hurts that innovation cycle, right? So when you're thinking about those 3 stacks and you have to upgrade each one, think about the innovation that comes with the upgrades. When you're limited to the time it takes to upgrade those, you limit your innovation as well. So at the end of the day, security really shouldn't be an afterthought or a big overhead for a business to maintain. Nutanix really takes that comprehensive, more like a defense in depth approach to security, and it covers the entire infrastructure stack. And it really gets into that life cycle of it too. And you have to think about that when you're talking to your other vendors out there, and you have to understand what's the DNA behind it. So think about how security should really be a holistic approach when you're thinking about your infrastructure stack.
Yeah, I know a lot of security is just even understanding what the attack vectors are in the first place. And yeah, I could certainly see from a traditional architecture standpoint, as you were saying, if you're a storage company, sure, you lock it down from a storage standpoint, but there are necessary vectors there that they have to provide for other vendors, be it compute vendors, virtualization vendors, whatever they are, to come in, and as a result, they only have the ability to open the channel to others. They don't have the ability to lock that down because they don't have control over the other end. So I could see where with Nutanix owning the entire soup to nuts platform, that there's a kind of a completely different mentality there, where not only are you covering the entire gamut, but it's no longer something that is well, if it's off of our platform, it's not our problem anymore because you're encompassing it all. And that I don't know, to me from a security standpoint, that's huge, right? I mean, you can ignore the other vectors in until you get attacked, right? And at the end of the day, that's what the problem becomes. So so it seems to me that because you're encompassing all of those separate items, and I know this from working with you guys for a while, but it sure to me doesn't seem like you guys just decided to lock this down, with release 5. It's clearly been, it's something that changes over time, obviously, but it's not something that got created in the middle, right? It seems like it's been from the beginning. Am I right about that?
Yeah, you're totally spot on there. So interesting side note, and I'll give you the story behind this because I think it's it really validates the core of this. So there's these couple engineers who were at VMware, and they wanted to build in security into the product. And what ended up happening is they weren't able to convince the management there to do it. So they came over to Nutanix, and this is in the early days, and they said, they talked to our exec team and said, can we build this into the product because we believe so much into it. And our exec team totally bought into it. They said, that's great. Every single piece of software since then has been hardened by default. So anybody who's ever bought Nutanix hardware, they get it hardened by default. And that's not, they don't have to pay anything extra for that. So just to elaborate a little bit on that, is security really isn't a bolt-on to an existing software development process here, right? The entire process was redesigned to allow security development at every stage of the development process. So what I'm talking about is the first day that the code is built to the last day of development, security researchers and developers are recommending changes to the code and processes and writing code to harden every service at every layer. So it's really powerful.
So does That's interesting, by the way. I didn't know the story about VMware. It's kind of neat. I guess the thing that sticks out to me is that there's more of an all-encompassing approach. So a question for you. I know there is the sort of the products that you get on the box that, you know, that come with it. And I say products, I should just be calling it a single item because it is all just one thing from you guys. But what I'm curious about is, you know, for those who don't know, there's a pretty rich ecosystem of partners out there. And, you know, each one of those has a different way of tying in. So, I mean, I can't believe that, you know, with the mentality that you have so far that you've, you know, decided to ignore partners, you know, at that level. You talk a little bit about how you extend that out to that ecosystem.
Yeah, sure. So at the end of the day, you know, no product is an island, right? So Nutanix takes a holistic approach to delivering comprehensive security through, you know, a broad ecosystem partnership that helps meet our security needs, right, and the needs of our customers. This includes network security, endpoint security, data security. We have basically a whole host of partners that really complement our solution. For example, if you chose to use our self-encrypting drive technology to really help with those PCI and DSS and HIPAA technical regulatory requirements, you want to make sure that, you know, you want to use maybe an external key management provider, right? And we allow you to do that through you know, our open protocol called KMIP. And companies like Formetric and Gemalto can help you with that. If you want, you know, antivirus or anti-malware for your VMs, we work with companies like Trend or Intel or Kaspersky. Those are just a few, but like we continually add. And what the real question becomes when you're talking, you know, to these vendors is that you want to make sure they're looking at security holistically, right? That it's the entire infrastructure stack that they're looking at it. You know, otherwise they're not telling you the full story.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I know I've heard you and other Nutanix folks just under the guise of security talking about Nutanix's security development lifecycle. You know, it's good to know that it exists, obviously, but tell me a little bit about its importance and how it fits together with everything here.
Yeah, sure. So again, it's a little bit about you know, making sure that you start off with a secure base, right? So your building blocks are hardened by default. But the Nutanix security development lifecycle at Nutanix called SecDL. It's really a comprehensive and cross-functional process that our security engineering and research team here provide, right? They do it both with a defense in depth and hardened by default posture, and as we release GA products, right? So customers today try and bolt on security after, right? They set up their infrastructure like we talked about, and super time consuming and error prone. And then, you know, they get the hardening guides for each one of those pieces of infrastructure. They end up setting those up, right? And they harden it, and then they bring on the application. And then the application, you know, doesn't work. And what do they first do? They start to relax those policies. And, you know, I'm a true testament to that statement just because I was a network security architect for Fidelity Investments. No longer there, so not speaking about it from that respect. But, you know, you do have to relax those security policies to make the application work, right? So with Nutanix, you really don't have to do that. We harden the box by default. So our QA team, they've been trained to run external third-party scanning tools. One is called Nessus, another one's called Retina. And what they do is they run this against our software, look for vulnerabilities, and they patch it before it ever gets up to a customer. So when a customer gets the Nutanix, you know, solution, they know that it's already been through a rigorous process. And if anything happened between the time that it came out, you know, the software was released, and the time the customer deployed, know that Nutanix is looking at the vulnerabilities on the back end, and we're going to issue a dot release to help out with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know those two tools well, and we use them a fair amount with our customers, and not always, but usually those are the kinds of things that you're scanning stuff that's publicly available on the internet. So it's a completely different threat model than internally. So it's certainly a higher bar there to be able to be looking at something that's typically internal under the microscope of the public internet. So definitely gives you confidence from that end for sure. So we've been talking here kind of relatively high level stuff, and I know in a lot of our conversations with some of our customers, be they government, healthcare, or wherever, that all of this is fine, well, and great, and it's good enough to kind of talk at a higher level, but where the kind of nitty-gritty questions come are typically on the more specific things that you support. So I know one of the first questions out of our government, especially customers, are about STIGs, so the Security Technical Implementation Guides. I know I've seen some of them out there, but talk to me a little bit about, obviously they exist at some level, but what have you done as far as developing those, and give me more details on them.
Yeah, sure. STIGs are highly important, and they only become important when you've got your product all deployed, and then you walk over to your security team and they start asking you questions about, are you going to pass this audit, right? And the idea here is that we want to make that part of your job that much easier. So Nutanix publishes these custom security baseline documents, and I think you alluded to them. They're called STIGs, right? The Security Technical Implementation Guides, and they cover the entire infrastructure stack and basically prescribe steps to securing the deployment in the field. So these STIGs are really published, in machine-readable format, and they allow for automated validation, and really the ongoing monitoring of a security baseline. And this is all geared around meeting that compliance. So what Nutanix has done is implemented it through a security configuration management automation. We call it SCMA. And what it does is it checks these, over 800 checks in, across 5 STIGs that are built into the product. And they cover both that storage and that virtualization. And they check for these vulnerabilities. So if you've ever looked at, any of these STIG documents, right, they're hundreds of pages long. And the idea there is that you'll have to take it and you'll read the vulnerability, and then it'll tell you how to fix it. So it'll say, okay, go to, your command line and remove this permission on this file, or reduce the the number of folks who can log into the box, or change the time of when, you're logging information. And all this is really, it's error prone and it's very manual. And the idea that, Nutanix did was that, we talked to our federal customers, and they were like, well, we need, the next wave of this. Great, STIGs are out there, and we know they exist. How can you do it better? And what we did is we took it and we built it into our product. And these STIGs are built in so that that manual process of trying to interpret what they mean by that vulnerability and trying to fix it, they're already built in. So we're checking for those things by default. So there's that baseline that exists, and you can actually, take it a step further. What we did beyond that is to say, hey, let's set up this baseline. And sometimes people, inadvertently, they'll go in and, change a port, right? Because they want to troubleshoot something, and then they walk out to lunch and they forget that that port is, open. Right. And what we'll do on the back end is we'll go ahead and close that back up for you. And you can change that, through command line option to hourly, daily, weekly, or monthly. You can choose the interval of what you want. So rest assured that next time that, a security audit comes up, that you're going to pass, right? Because, Nutanix is going to automate and self-heal that on the back end.
I know that's a common, the self-healing, common theme across the board, not just in security for sure. It's something I just thought of, having done, a number of installs on my own as well as, CoreTech wide. So Nutanix goes through, just like any other company, they go through hardware revisions. So I know we've seen the G3, G4s, G5s, and so on, and all the different models within there. In terms of security, when I think about that raises an interesting challenge in the sense that it's a constantly changing landscape there from a hardware standpoint. Talk to me a little bit about how Nutanix handles that challenge.
Yeah, so in terms of the hardware, right, at the end of the day, the hardware is a commodity to Nutanix. So you're right, we work with several flavors of the hardware, and we make sure that, the latest and greatest is available for our customers to really meet those mission critical application needs, right? So from the latest GPUs to the latest processors to the latest in flash technology, Nutanix is definitely thoroughly vetting each piece of that hardware. Again, the innovation that we have is all in our software. So we go and we thoroughly vet, the software that we write, and anything that's deployed on the hardware, know that it's all been validated and it's been hardened through that SecDL process that I talked about.
Got it. Okay, good to know. So, guys like you and I could go on about this stuff all day long. Right? This is awesome stuff, and it's especially with the product and kind of deepness of thought behind this. There's certainly a lot to go through. What I want to do is pause for a second because we have actually gotten some questions from some of the folks on the webinar. So what I think I'll do is I'll ask you some of these questions, and maybe we can talk through them a little bit. So
sure.
The first, I think, relatively simple. What about cryptography? That's just simply put. What about cryptography? So what do you have to say about cryptography? How is that stitched in here?
Yeah, so it's there's lots of ways to go about this, but I'll try to answer it the best that I can here. So we've basically enabled a kernel enforced FIPS mode on our controller VM. So each one of the Nutanix nodes has a CVM, we call it the controller VM, and that's where we've enabled that kernel enforced FIPS mode, right? So we're using NIST, government high standards for cryptography, as our benchmark and for RGA design. So think about, when you think cryptography, you also think about the hashing algorithms and the signatures, and we use SHA-512 by default. Then on top of that, in terms of other cryptography angles, you could think about whether you're using SSL and what version of that, but we've moved to a TLS only design with the server and enforcement of cipher order and prioritization. So the other angle, there's only one more angle I could think of off the top of my head, is around the keys, and we're using RSA 2048-bit keys with an elliptic curve DSA 256-bit and elliptic curve DSA 384 from NSA Suite B to top secret. So that's all of these, you don't have to dive into each one of these, but know that we're in these government accounts because we can meet the cryptography requirements that they have.
And I know you mentioned very briefly before, but certainly at another level, one of the options that's available is to get self-encrypting drives themselves. So that way you'll have the data at rest encrypted as well, which I know we've had a couple of requests for over the years. Let's see, next item here, the good old CV. So what does Nutanix do around common vulnerabilities and exposures, the good old CV indexes?
Oh yeah, yeah. And again, we hashed on this a little bit before, but the idea there is that Nutanix takes it very seriously. I'll give you a quick story. Last year, around the March timeframe, there was a vulnerability out there, and it was called Drown. And what it was an SSL2 version hack, and it allows you to do some man-in-the-middle stuff, so you can actually, try to obtain, credentials and things. And Nutanix doesn't even use the SSL version 2 to authenticate to Prism, which is our management interface. We use TLS, like I just mentioned, by default. But what we did there was we have some libraries in our software, and within 6 days, we had a release out with updated patches. And that's not because of our customers, phoning in and saying, hey, Nutanix, there's a vulnerability out there. Can you tell us how you're going to react? Our security team, the research and development team I talked about before, they're all over it, right? They're looking at these things out in the wild, and they're reacting faster than a lot of these other vendors out there. And then we get that out to the customer to make sure that they stay hardened.
Yeah, I remember when those patches came out and comparing, to other products I saw out there, what the reaction time was, and it's always nice when you don't have that nervous time when there's nothing you can do about it, and you're unpatched. But when that time is minimized as much as possible, and so that's been my experience, at least in the field, is as quickly as possible these things are getting patched, and typically that's faster than most other products out there for sure. Last one, you actually, I think, addressed this, at least one of them, but and so I'll read it anyway. Feel free to make any other comments. And so you mentioned Drowned. The question is about, I think, clearly we have a security person on here. It's about other SSL-related attacks. So it was, the question is around reaction time in those attacks. What was your reaction time to, and again, I don't know if you want to go into each one of these, but what was your reaction time to Drown, Beast, Crime, and Freak? I think certainly at a high level you mentioned there, how quickly you turned around the Drown patch. I don't know if you know off the top of your head what any of those others look like, but just, and if nothing else, speak at a high level to
Sure.
Patch time.
Yeah. So yeah, I covered Drown, that one, because it seems to be the one that a lot of folks have asked questions about in the past as I talk about the security story with our customers. In terms of the other ones, yeah, you're right. I don't know off the top of my head, but the idea there is that everything goes through the same process. So everything is hardened through that SecDL process, and we're using these external third-party tools to actually validate our software. So it's not just our software developers looking at their own code. It's these external tools looking at our software and making sure that it's been validated and patched. And then on top of that, we've got security engineers who are just focused in on these vulnerabilities themselves, and they are, that's their day job. So they are ironically, part of the Nutanix team as well.
Yeah, that one thing that definitely strikes me is that it's not what I'll call a media-centric security company. So in other words, they're not waiting until they see it on CNN to patch their vulnerabilities. Is typically ahead of time for sure. It's been my experience for sure. Okay, I think that's the last of our questions. There is, of course, the always present option for questions after the fact. Feel free to send an email to info@coretechservices.com. And again, want to thank you all for coming. Like I said, that we'll make this link available to you all after the fact. And in fact, I think at some point this will show up on our YouTube channel, so you will be able to share it from that standpoint as well. So again, thank you all for coming. Thank you, Rohit. It's been good chatting with you. And we'll hopefully talk to you guys in the near future.
Thank you, Todd. Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll see you guys later.